Welcome, everybody. It is such a joy to be here. Julie and I are just thrilled to be able to offer this workshop. So to get us going in true Coda fashion, let's start off with a moment of silence and the Serenity prayer. Higher power, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Amen.
So we're going to get started with quick introductions. They're kind of quick shares about myself and my background with codependency in the workplace, and Julie will do the same. And we'll give you a quick overview of the agenda for today. I've also posted a link to our kind of worksheet and whiteboard in the chat. So you can have a sneak peek of what we're going to be covering. So I have been in Coda since 2012. I have found that the workplace is one of the situations that causes me the greatest pain with codependency, actually. My family background, my family of origin was kind of a breeding ground for this. So my dad was he grew up on a farm in Iowa, and it was very much uphill both ways in the snow. So he was a workaholic, and my mom was the oldest of, I think, 9 kids. I'm actually not entirely sure. But her job was to take care of everyone, right? So on both sides of my family, I have basically just compulsive activity, which serves to avoid feelings, right? And so that's part of codependency in the workplace for me, is that I have trouble setting healthy priorities. So I'm working too much. I'm saying yes to everything. I'm not saying no when I need to say no. There's a lot of avoidance, people pleasing, indirect and evasive communication. And because I'm not honest, there's also resentment that builds. There is misunderstanding. Sometimes there's passive aggression, and sometimes that really comes out as aggression. And a very painful situation happened for me this past, I guess it was a couple of years ago now. And I've been working my steps about this situation where it was, bad enough that I needed to leave the job basically the next day. I was told, it's, here's the door. And, it was incredibly painful. So I have been finding the promises do come true through working the steps. And, one of the things I've also done is kind of over-identified with my work. Really easy to do, I think, in our culture. It's like, to get value and affirmation from, looking good. I went to a highfalutin university and everything. And wow, it's just been sort of terror when I've been perceiving that I might be failing. And, it's a lot of imposter syndrome. So I have, in fact, lost one job and actually almost lost another one. I got a demotion. And if it wasn't that, it was going to be leaving. So there's a lot there. And, that's my story, is like, now I am finding so much more freedom spiritually by using the tools of the program. And, actually this past week, even I left a work situation which wasn't serving me. It was a piece that I took on too much, and it was harming my health. And so this is all very current for me. Julie, you want to do a quick intro?
Of course. Thank you so much, Vanessa. Before I do my intro, I want to do a quick step 6 and 7 prayer to connect to my feelings in my heart. God, please direct my thoughts and actions. Please remove my fear and anxiety and replace it with peace and serenity and beautiful words to share with my Coda family. Thank you for that. My name is Julie B. I'm a grateful recovering codependent. Happy birthday to you all. And I brought flowers for us. Yes, yes, yes. To share yellow flowers for my family. So I've been in the program since 2000, so 21 years, and I'm still ticking. I'm still here. And I met Vanessa at my home group in San Francisco. It was probably about maybe 7 or 8 years ago. Is that correct, Vanessa? Something like that. So she asked me to be her sponsor. And I said, hell yeah. And so we would meet for dinner, like mostly every week in the city after our Coda meeting. And when she would share her step work, there was a common thread, codependency in the workplace. And I can identify with that. And hence this workshop was born. But several years ago, my other addiction grabbed me by the ankles. So I stopped sponsoring. And I shared that with Vanessa. And even though our sponsorship relationship ended, our love continues. So thank you so much, Vanessa, for loving me and sharing your experience, strength, and hope. Woohoo. So I'm going to go ahead and share about the powerlessness of my childhood history and behaviors that I learned about the workplace growing up. So since codependency is a generational pass down, it's important to acknowledge the powerlessness of my ancestors who were slaves. Their work history was very fear-based, shame-based, controlling, and they had to be perfect or else there'd be consequences. And so my grandparents on my father's side had a farm and they were sharecroppers. And they passed that slave mentality down to my father and his siblings, the same type of abuse. And then on my mother's side in North Carolina, my grandmother and aunts were maids and for Caucasians. And they held a lot of anger and resentment towards their employers. So I heard a lot of shaming, blaming, and finger pointing. But here's the thing, I'm not here to blame my family of origin or put more shame and judgment on my family of origin. I'm actually here to celebrate the gift of awareness and the recovery tools. So that's what I'm here to do. Take a moment. So my family moved to Rochester, New York, where there were more opportunities for work back in the 50s and the 60s. My mother was a babysitter and she caretook Caucasian children. And my father was a houseboy. That's what he was called, a servant. And so my mother really wanted to work in the stock market, but they wouldn't let colored people work in the stock market. They said you can clean the bathroom, but my mother didn't want to do that. So she took on a job in the auto industry for a very well-known car manufacturer, which paid a lot of money, but it was monotonous work. And she did not like it. And she told me many, many times. So the tape recorded message that I heard is, take a job you don't like until you retire. It doesn't matter. So that's what I heard growing up. So my dominant codependent pattern is staying in harmful situations too long, job hopping, and very low self-esteem. So in the 60s, when my father was a houseboy, he worked for this very wealthy Caucasian family who treated him well and valued him. And they were nice to me when they went to Jamaica, they bought me dolls. And so then in the late 60s, my father took a job in the financial service industry as an office supply clerk. And he loved this job, but he was an under earner. Okay. So hence now in 2021, I'm an under earner in the financial service industry. So I took on my father's path. My mother was the primary breadwinner of the family. She supported my father's under-earning. Now, I don't have a primary breadwinner but me, and I'm an under-earner. And so with my English and pain, there's another 12-step program that deals with that I'm in. So there is a solution. So to balance this off, I'm going to talk about the good that I saw growing up into my family of origin. My father taught me how to become a good customer service rep. He was very courteous and kind, and he planted that in me. And as a result, in my adult life, I received a lot of prestigious awards in the customer service industry. And my mother was big on gratitude. So she would teach me how to write gratitude cards and send thank you notes. So those are some of the things that I incorporate in my work patterns on the positive note. So with that being said, we're moving on to the next part of our workshop. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm sharing my screen to give you a sense of what we're going to be going through in the workshop today. Starting off with some context, reflecting on our past, unpacking the problem as well as the solutions. And we're going to build a recovery resume, which I'm really excited about. This is basically a way of doing step work and then sharing with one another, which is, again, step 5. So a little bit of context, just why the workplace is so fraught. It's where we spend most of our non-waking hours, most of our non-home waking hours. We spend a lot of time at work. It's our livelihood. We need to be able to work to provide, sustenance for ourselves and our families. And as I mentioned, in our society, we get a lot of sort of identity from what we do for work. At least I'll speak for myself, I do. So yeah, that's a lot. There's a lot of weight on that.
Vanessa? Hey,
Yes.
Vanessa. I don't know if you're intending to share a slide, but right now I see just your desktop with a window with a folder.
Oh, that is not what I was intending to share. Let me try that again. How about this?
Yes, I see the Google
Oh, so
Docs
much
now.
better. Oh, thank you. Teamwork. So, we all come from such different walks of life in CODA. That's one of the things I really love about the program is, someone might work in construction, someone might work at a call center, someone might work in consulting. I picked all C's. There's all sorts of things that we might do to make money and earn a living. But we're united in some of these very painful experiences that we have in the workplace. The compulsive control of our present. That is so true. So when a boss says, we need to talk, and immediately you're thinking, oh my God, am I getting fired? Or when you say yes to a job with circumstances or pay that just doesn't work for you, these experiences can create really deep shame, fear of shame, and then you have all sorts of control and avoidance patterns coming out of the woodwork. So what unites us too is our experience, strength, and hope, and the freedom we find through the program. So there are tools that have worked for many of us. Some of those are official tools of the program, and some of those are more sort of individual tools that we found work for us. And we're going to unpack a little bit of both today.
And I would like to add, see the picture of the bird in the cage? Thank you. So that picture, when I joined CODA 21 years ago, when I moved to Vegas, that was in the CODA welcome package. And so I saw that every week, and it's like, there is a way out in the back of the cage. So that was a resemblance of me. So thank you.
And we have a little poll here. We wanted to share with you basically the fact that you're not alone in a lot of the challenging work stuff that we come across. I think Mauricio is going to be able to share that with us. And I put up, while you're doing that, I put up this image of the blame thrower. I don't know if anyone else uses that. I do. So rumors, gaslighting, blame, lies. It's not my fault, it's you. So that's one of the fun things that comes up for me in the workplace.
And for me, victimizing, pointing fingers.
Are we ready for the poll?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the poll has 5 questions. I don't have a lot of experience launching polls, but I am able to launch one. So I'm not sure how long it's going to stay on your screen. So I'm
Okay.
going to launch it here, and there's 5 questions. They're just yes, no questions. Here we go. So it's launching right now.
Woo. Okay, thank you. So I'll just move along with this. So it's really hard and we are not alone. So the first question is, have you been let go, terminated, or fired from your jobs? Okay. Second question, do you identify as under earners and or debtors? Question 3. Oops.
It looks like it's
It's okay. Do you identify as a workaholic?
Yeah.
Okay. Question 4. Have you been a bully or bullied at work? 5. This is the last question. Have you been pushed to the limit or edge with COVID? I know I have. I like this. Thank you, Mauricio.
okay. Do you want the screen back? I can stop sharing.
Sure. So Julie and I shared some of what we learned, growing up, and how that kind of formed our workplace issues. We wanted to take a minute to share kind of also what we learned from our first jobs, because that has been very impactful for us. And then what we're going to do is go into some breakout rooms where you can share what you learned growing up about work, and maybe what you learned from your first job. So I will just say briefly, my first job was, I was kind of an intern almost, and it was just, I took all of my issues from home and brought them to work, and it was, don't bother people, sort of, I just felt invisible. And so my experience was I was going around to all these different sort of people in the office and asking if they had any projects for me. And yeah, there was a lot of shame. There was an inability to ask for what I wanted or what I needed. And you definitely set the stage for me to continue not asking for what I wanted and needed. And just like, it's basically staying in sort of harmful dynamics too long. I got very depressed actually, doing this kind of work. And I just thought this is where I belong. This is what I get, like drudgery. I mean, it was very, very profoundly boring. And it was just really sad. I just thought like, yeah, this is what I'm supposed to do. Work is supposed to be suffering. Julie, you want to tag in?
Thank you for sharing. So my first job was at a famous fast food chain, and I felt excited and eager to do well. I was 16, I believe. I got assigned to the cash register, but I couldn't catch on, and back then those cash registers they weren't very electronic. And so my boss, I struggled, and my boss, I believe it was a reflection on her, and we bumped heads and she laid me off. And so I felt so much shame and, the perfectionism characteristic. And I was depressed too, because, I believe I wasn't good enough. So 2 months later, I mustered enough courage to go back to grab some lunch. And the assistant manager said, "Oh, she got transferred to another restaurant. Would you like to come back?" And I'm like, me? Oh, sure. And then they said, we would like you to be the hostess. And once I shared before about my father planting the seed of good customer service skills, that was a perfect job for me. But the pattern that I learned and was seeded was putting a square peg in a round hole, like not being in jobs that were not a good fit for me. And then having a lot of fear and anguish and just pain around it, like staying too long in jobs that weren't suited for me. So now we're on to the problem. Dun, 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 dun. And so when we shared in the breakout rooms, we were actually sharing about the powerlessness of our past and our childhoods and, you know, in the workplace. So now we're going to unpack the problem, which is the briefcase that we take to work with us. So what are the codependent feelings, thoughts, and interactions that show up in the workplace? So what we're looking for, we're going to do a quick brainstorming session. So we're looking for brief phrases and not long stories, because you'll be able to share later in the part 2. But for example, people pleasing. And Vanessa's going to scribe for us. So whoever wants to join in and just throw out phrases, Vanessa will scribe. Collaborate on solutions.
And, you know, before we do that, I just wanted to say, like, these problems, like, wow, they do kind of fit into the patterns and characteristics of codependency, right? So, you know, denial, low self-esteem, control. Yeah, and I can speak for myself to say, like, as people were speaking up, I'm like, yeah, I resonate. There's so much resonance here. So yeah, let's unpack solutions. And I'll share some of my favorite solutions. And I think Julie is going to help scribe on this. One of my favorite solutions is setting myself up for success before the workday with Coda tools. And when my life is feeling unmanageable, especially, I use these. So that would be doing prayer and meditation, using affirmations.
I'm unable to scribe, sorry.
Okay, I will scribe after I'm done, like, kind of sharing. Also, and I will take a minute during the workday to do some of these things too. So if I am finding that I am in, often it's fear, it's like freezing with fear. I know, okay, it's time to take a walk, call someone. I often would call Julie or another Coda fellow. And the way I've arranged, you know, is asking permission. Can I leave a voicemail, even if you don't pick up, and just share? So I get my 3-minute share on someone's voicemail. And then also one of the solutions I really like is using tradition 3. So tradition 3 is that the only requirement for membership is a desire for healthy and loving relationships. So I have learned to bring my desire for healthy and loving relationships into the workplace with me. I think it can be tempting to be like, oh, that doesn't fit, healthy and loving relationships in the workplace. No, those are separate things. But I bring that to my relationships at work. And I say, to people I work with, my goal is to have a healthy relationship with you. I might not even say it that way. I might say a constructive or positive working relationship. But I bring that desire, and I will actually vocalize that desire at work. And I'll also use images or props to remind me of my intention to have healthy and loving relationships. So I'll have like a picture of my favorite meditation teacher, or I'll use something like these little beads that a coach that I really love gave to me as a gift to remind me of my empowerment. Those are a couple of my favorite solutions. And we'd like to hear some of your favorite solutions.
Can I share one for myself? Thank you, Vanessa. So I'm at work and I'm building all this fear. And my manager reached out and said, Julie, I need to talk to you. So I'm like, oh my goodness. So I just it's called Making Shit Up, MSU. So I made, that I was in trouble. So before I called her, I recited the Serenity prayer. And then to connect to my higher power. And then when I called her, she said, Julie, you're getting a raise. So all that fear was not necessary. I mean, I felt it, but I built up MSU before, and then the Serenity prayer brought me back to my higher power. So I do the Serenity prayer a lot when I'm scared, when I go to the doctors to get, blood work done. So I just do that. It's like a quick connection to my higher power. Thank you. Okay. And so, for example, this is part of our step work. One minute here. So step one, I'm just going to do a quick recap of the first 3 steps. So step one in the Code of Blue book, it talks about we explore the powerlessness of our childhood. So that's the first part of step one, which we already did when you broke up into the breakout rooms. You shared about the powerlessness of your childhood and your work. And then unmanageability, how do the patterns show up in our adult lives at work? And for me, the unmanageability is a hamster wheel of obsession and the patterns. So step 2 is, do I really want peace and serenity? And so, and how is my higher power? Because if I use the higher power of my childhood, which is fear-based, shame-based, perfectionist, and mean, then I'm going to be stuck. So I have to bring a higher power of my own understanding, which I learned in Coda: love, compassion, and a good listener. So when I'm ready to release my old higher power, step 2 shows up. And then step 3 is I turn it all over to my higher power. If I have that old higher power, I'm not going to do that. So now we're on to step 4. And I'm going to give a quick example of a situation that I've explored in, that I've experienced. And Vanessa's going to bring that up. Okay, so in my last job, my employer gave me a salary and I didn't speak up. So my codependent fear-based behavior is I was unable to identify or ask for what I need and want. And so the recovery pattern, which is love-based, is I meet my own needs and wants when possible, and I reach out for help when it's necessary and appropriate. And this, I'm using the Recovery Patterns of Codependence. You can download it on www.coda.org. So I'm keeping it very simple. So these are my patterns. Now, I've attended one of Mary, the co-founder, her 4th step workshop, and she likes to put a recovery action next to each characteristic. So in this case, in regards to my salary, my recovery action is to do a research on salaries, like to be more prepared instead of taking a salary, like I said, okay, too fast. I didn't pray about it, I didn't research. So my recovery action is researching salaries. Researching and then reaching out to my higher power in my sponsor. And then the next one is I do not perceive myself as lovable and worthwhile for a good salary. And my recovery pattern would be I recognize myself as being a lovable and valuable person. And my recovery action is writing affirmations. So there's my 4th step. And I took it from the Recovery Patterns of Codependence.
And
So
the Recovery Patterns document is linked from this handout. And I can also place it in the chat for you all. Does that make sense? So we were filling out a chart. This is a way of working step 4. So the codependent pattern we put in one column, and that's the fear-based behavior. The recovery pattern comes next. It's the behavior that's based from love. And then a recovery action is what you're going to do to embody and live out this recovery pattern.
Right. And I wanted to add that my pattern comes from low self-esteem. It's the low self-esteem category. I have low self-esteem at work. So this is my recovery resume, hence my 4th step. And when I work steps 1, 2, and 3, it helps me convert fear into love. So when I work step 1, I'm usually frightened or overwhelmed, fear-based, and obsessive. So now when I work the first 3 steps, it gets me to a fearless moral inventory. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. Did you want to introduce the next activity?
Yeah, so what we'll do is send you into breakout rooms again. And what we'll invite you to do, either using pen and paper if you have it handy, or you can use your phone or your computer that you're on, is to make a recovery resume like this. So create a column for a codependent pattern, put down a corresponding recovery pattern, and some recovery actions. So you'll be creating this chart on your own. We'll give you 5 minutes to kind of work on creating your chart, and then we'll invite you to do some sharing.
Great things. So thank you. So the next piece, we're winding down the workshop, is step 6 and 7, and Vanessa's going to demonstrate that.
Yeah, so what I like to do, so if you're not familiar, step 6 is becoming entirely ready to have higher power remove the defects of character, or as I like to call them, flawed coping mechanisms, things which are no longer serving me. And then step 7 is asking higher power to remove them. So what I like to do is look at, and let me do a share screen again. I look at the codependent pattern, which I am wanting to have removed. And I'll say, it's the wrong one, but that's okay.
Hey, Vanessa, while you bring that up, just a heads up with a time check. We're about less than 15 minutes.
Yes,
Yep.
that works. So I would say higher power, remove this inability to ask for what I want and replace it with the capacity to meet my own needs and reach out for help. I would say, higher power, please remove the sense that I'm not lovable and worthwhile. Please replace it with the recognition that I'm a lovable and worthwhile person. Or you could just even say, please remove people pleasing and replace it with speaking my truth. So that's how I work step 6 and 7. And I wanted to give folks an opportunity right now just to ask your higher power in whatever way works for you. It could be saying those words out loud to yourself, quietly to yourself, or it could even be in writing. Sometimes I'll like to kind of write in my journal, higher power, I'm ready to have you remove these fear-based patterns, and please replace them with a love-based pattern. So yeah, just take 2 minutes now. And
Vanessa, can I share mine real quick?
Oh, please do.
So I had a lot of resentment and anger towards my employer. So this is my step 6 and 7. I call my higher power God, Goddess, Universe. God, please remove my anger and resentment towards my employer and my previous boss. Replace it with acceptance, love, and light. God bless them and change me. I am enough. And I wish them happiness with or without me. Okay.
Beautiful. So yeah, I'm just going to set a timer for kind of 2 minutes and give you all some time to ask your higher power to work in your life. I was busy asking my higher power to help me get that sense that I am enough, that it's not, I'm always judging harshly, never good enough. You haven't done enough, Vanessa. And the truth is that I have. Truth is that I have.
Yes. And for me, I want to share a situation that recently happened. I'm an under earner, as I shared, and so I just stopped. So what I did was I resigned from my previous job in the financial service industry with a lot of prayer and meditation. So I resigned on October 1st of this year. When I resigned, my manager said something inappropriate, sort of on the lines of harassment. And I froze. My inner child did not speak up. I shared with my sponsor, I shared with my recovery family. And after more meditation, I called back and reported my manager. My inner child spoke up for herself. In my personal history, my inner child would not say anything. So I am free. And I still pray for my employer because my resentment creeps back in, and that's when I do the prayers that Vanessa demonstrated. So we have about how many minutes left, Mauricio?
It's 22 after, and so we have until 11:30, so about 8 minutes.
Okay, perfect. All right. So we're going to be closing right now. So how about we give ourselves all a raise? We don't have to wait on our employer. We would like to do affirmations and share affirmations. So to me, that's a way of giving my heart a raise. So, and also this is a way of working step 9, making amends to ourselves and to our inner child. So my raise or my affirmation is, my net worth is not my self-worth. So
My
Vanessa is
affirmation.
going to share hers.
Yeah, my affirmation is I set healthy priorities and I stay in my lane.
I like to use the Code of Promises as affirmations. So I am going to share affirmation promise number 8. I learned that it's possible for me to mend, to become more loving, intimate, and supportive. I have the choice of communicating with my family in a way which is safe for me and respectful of them and my employer.
That is so beautiful. And there's additional affirmations if you're looking for some at coda.org, and I'm there on our handout.
And also there's an affirmation booklet that you can purchase through coda.org through CORE, our publishing company.
Beautiful. So I think we can move to closing. We're going to